are there beliefs out there, Nir, that maybe it's good for you, but it's not true? Are there instances where you can believe something and it
Mhm.
helps you become more, do more, grow, but it's not true?
Yeah, absolutely. Where do we begin? There's many, 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 many. Yeah, for
But
sure.
how do we do with
Uh,
that? How do we contend with that? Is that okay? Does it destroy our psyche in some way? Like,
yeah,
how do we contend with that?
I'll give you an example. So when I was a kid, I used to pray. My family was going through a really, really hard time. We came to America when I was 3 years old, and a year or two after we arrived, my parents got scammed out of all their money by these Americans who took advantage of my parents not speaking much English, and they lost almost everything, and they had to rebuild from scratch. And we almost lost our home, and we almost had to leave America, but thankfully they plowed through. So I remember praying when my family was going through a lot of trouble. My parents used to scream at each other. I can still remember what that sounds like in my head. Um,
Mm.
and then as I grew up, I stopped praying because I didn't have faith. I thought, okay, I'm very scientifically minded. I really want. I think science is great. Science is not. It kills me when people say science says. There's no such thing as science says. Science is a process. It's a procedure, right? And science studies are often can't replicate, or they're wrong, or they're done incorrectly.
It's a
But that's the
continuation.
process. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yes.
There's no like conclusive evidence. This is it. It's done. Can't be revoked unless it's a law of physics or something. Anyway, um, but so I kind of gave up prayer for a very long time. And then when I was doing the research for Beyond Belief, I came across this incredible research, the literature around prayer, that prayer has unbelievably protective psychological effects. That people who
Mm.
pray live longer, they're happier, they have much lower rates of depression, they contribute more to their community. All kinds of good things happen when you pray. Now, I looked at this literature and I thought, well, that's very nice, but that's not for me because I don't really have
Yeah.
any supernatural inclinations. I don't have any faith in. I don't. That's just. It just wasn't what I. It doesn't speak to me. I've never had faith in the supernatural, so I kind of blew it off and said, well, it's nice for them, but not for me. And by the way, I'm not alone. Today in the United States, the largest religious group in America today, the largest religious group, are the nuns, not NUN, not the Catholic nuns, the NONEs, the people who don't affiliate with anything. A lot of people say they're religious, but not, or sorry, they're spiritual, but not religious. You hear that a lot. Those
Mm.
people
Yeah.
actually, there are studies that show that those people have the worst outcomes. They have the highest rates of depression and anxiety disorder. The spiritual, but not
Spiritual
religious.
but not religious.
Right. They have the worst psychological outcomes. Um, so part of that group, I used to be, a nun. Uh, I didn't affiliate with any kind of supernatural or faith. But then I came across this amazing study that showed that you can have the benefits of prayer even without faith. And that
Mm.
didn't make sense to me. I had to dig deeper. And here's what I learned. In this study, they had three groups of people. And they did this standard test. It's a pain tolerance test where they bring people in and they tell them to put their hands in super cold water. Okay, that water that's just above the freezing point, and they measure what's happening on their face, right? Are they grimacing? Oh, it's painful. I don't like it. And then finally, how long it takes them to take their hand out of the very cold water. So it's a pain tolerance test.
Mm.
And of
Yep.
these three groups, one group, there was no intervention. That was the control group. One group prayed with faith. So they came with some kind of religious conviction, some kind of faith tradition, Catholicism, Buddhism, Protestantism, Judaism, something. And then a third group were people who didn't affiliate with any religious community, but they taught these people how to pray. They taught
Mm.
them how to pray. And they said, in substitution for God, if you don't want to say God, that's fine. Substitute a meaningful word. Mother Nature, sum of all forces, the power of the universe, whatever you want, something that's meaningful to you if you don't feel comfortable saying God. And what was amazing was that the prayer group, as you would expect, had a much higher pain tolerance. That prayer had a protective effect on their ability to tolerate pain and suffering. That's amazing. But even the group that learned how to pray without
Mm.
having a particular religious faith also had higher pain tolerance, almost equivalent to the group that prayed with faith. That's amazing to me. And so what I did in Singapore, was that I went to talk to 5 religious leaders. It sounds like a setup of a joke. I talked to a priest, a rabbi, a monk, an imam, and a swami. And I
In a
asked,
bar, right? You talked to them
yeah,
in
in
a
a bar.
bar.
We all met up in a bar. No, I went to them. And I asked them the same question. How do you pray when you have uncertainties about God? Can you pray even if you're uncertain about God? And what I learned from them, I took lessons that anyone can use, that if you pray with faith, awesome. You're protecting yourself from all kinds of psychological maladies. But even if you don't find an affiliation with some kind of supernatural power, turns out that you can learn from each of these traditions and build your own prayer practice that can be very beneficial. So today, that's something I've changed. I used to think that it has to be, I'm not going to pray unless I can prove that everything in the Bible is true, because, if I don't know it's absolutely a fact, then who am I praying to? No, I've relaxed that condition because it's so beneficial. It's really improved my life. It helps me stay grounded. It helps me stay thankful. It helps me solve problems. So now I pray, and I don't ask myself if anybody's listening.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, my question is, did you convince your wife and your daughter to pray too?
My daughter, it's too, no, I wouldn't try. First of all, I don't convince anybody of anything. I've never found that to be useful. But in fact, I learned it from my wife, that my wife grew up Buddhist. And it's interesting, in many Eastern cultures, like for example, in Japan, it's the exact opposite of what we have in America. In America, you find a lot of people who are spiritual but not religious. In Japan, it's the exact opposite. You find a lot of people who are religious but not spiritual. So they are doing it right because they still go to temple, they still go to the Shinto shrines, and it's part of being Japanese that you definitely have to do the rituals, and they do them. But when you actually ask them, do you really think that there's a spirit here? Do you believe in the animism? Do you believe that no, they don't really believe in the supernatural stuff, but they absolutely do the rituals, and they reap the psychological benefits.
That's so interesting. Wow, that's really cool. So if it helps you in any way, shape, or form, use it as a tool. I mean, that's really your message. Like, don't worry about all these other things. If it works, use it. Use it as a tool.
Yes, but remember, the definition of belief is that it is open to revision based on new evidence.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
right,
if
so
anything changes,
right.
If anything changes, change with it.
And you should reassess. Now I'll tell you the biggest criticism. There is a criticism here that I hear sometimes, which is, aren't you telling people to deluge themselves? Aren't you telling people to gaslight? Like, aren't you telling us to just lie? Right? Yeah. I just have to be delusional here? Well, I would argue you are already delusional.
That's you already have those
already
filters. You already have those lenses. Yeah, it's already there.
Exactly. Choose the right ones.
There. Choose
it's
the right
already
ones.
there.
It reminds me of did you watch The Last Dance about Michael Jordan, about his basketball career? So it's a fantastic,
I didn't catch it.
Fantastic documentary. And there's one thing that he did. He chose to believe when he was fighting for the championship for the Chicago Bulls. He chose to believe his opponents were actively, basically bad-mouthing him, trash-talking him, thinking that he couldn't do what he could do. So he chose a belief where it amped up his competitiveness, and that allowed him to just play through pain, play through sickness, and lo and behold, right? I mean, he's 6 times NBA champion.
I'll give you another one. Serena Williams at Wimbledon. She was having a really rough time. Her coach goes up to her and tells her, I was looking at the stats, and when you rush the net, you score a point 80% of the time. Now, that wasn't true. He just made it up. He literally made it up and told her this. And she says, I thought I sucked at the net. And he says, well, you can't lie with the stats. The stats show 80% of the time, you do a great job when you rush the net. And guess what? She started doing that, changed her game, and of course won Wimbledon.
That's crazy. Okay, then that goes into like ethics and integrity. So how far do we push this, Nir?
Yeah.
What do we
open
do
to revision based on new evidence?
Yeah.
So the power of it is that the lie, this was her coach's words, the lie became the truth. So at first the evidence wasn't there.
but she kept doing it and it became right. And
It
she
became
actually made
true.
this stat. Oh my God. This is so crazy.
Crazy,
It's
right?
absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And we see this again
Yeah.
and again, right? When we think
Yeah.
about, you know, people who have a tremendous amount of agency. When you think about Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
okay? When you think about Donald Trump, you know, I'm not talking politics, who you like, who you don't like. These two people have what Walter Isaacson called a reality distortion field.
That's right.
They saw things that everybody else says is crazy. Yeah, Donald Trump's going to win the election. Come on, you're nuts, right? The first time you heard that, Steve Jobs, right? Like, I'm going to do this thing. It's going to happen. People around him would say, "You're
Yeah.
impossible. Can't happen. Will never be." But
Yeah.
he believed. And look, most of the time he failed. It's amazing when you look at the number. If you count up the number of times that successful people fail, successful people fail way more than unsuccessful people. That's not what we think. We think unsuccessful people, they're losers, they fail a lot. No, it's because they don't fail enough, because they don't try, right? It's the persistent people who win, and persistent people fail a bunch. But hey, every
Right.
once in a while, if you keep trying, if you're persistent, great things happen.